Hello, friends. It's time for Chapter 7. We're finally getting caught up. One more chapter, and then we will be ready for the rest of our story. Chapter 7 is called A Big Meal from Little Onions. Cooking something up on the fire. The next morning, Jessie and Henry talked about the queer noise. They did not tell Violet and Benny about it. "What do you think it was?" asked Jessie. "Do you think it was a rabbit?" "I don't know," said Henry, "but I think somebody was in the woods. I am glad we weren't hurt. Someone must have stepped on a stick and made it crack." "What should we do?" asked Jessie. "Nothing," said Henry. "Watch is a good watchdog. He loves us now, and if anybody tried to hurt us, Watch would take care of us. He would do more than growl, I'm sure. But after this, we must not let Benny go into the woods alone." "I'll keep Benny and Violet with me all the time," said Jessie. "Good," said Henry, "and keep Watch with you all the time, too." "Good morning, Benny. Time to get up. Today you must build something for me out of stones." "What is it?" asked Benny eagerly. "I'm not going to tell you," said Henry, laughing. "You build it just as Jessie tells you, and you will see." Henry was so eager to begin work that he ran all the way to town. The doctor came to the door and smilingly looked him over from head to toe. "My mother will tell you what to do today," the doctor said. "She wants you to work in her garden." Mrs. Moore, the doctor's mother, had a sweet face and looked very kind. "Good morning, Henry," she said. "Do you know how to thin out vegetables?" "Oh, yes," said Henry. "I'd like to work in a vegetable garden." "I haven't had too much time to take care of my garden," Mrs. Moore said. "There, see that?" She pulled out a carrot. It had to come... It had to come out, for it was much too near the other carrots. "Oh, yes, I see," said Henry. He began to thin out the carrots. Mrs. Moore watched him as he pulled out some of the little carrots and put them in a pile. He left the other carrots there to grow. Then he began on the turnips. "You are a good worker," said Mrs. Moore. "I can see that." She smiled at Henry. "You may thin out all of these vegetables." Then she went into the house and she left Henry alone. He worked all the morning. He thinned out the carrots, the turnips, and little onions. The mill bells began at noon, but Henry was so busy working he didn't even hear them. He still worked on in the hot sun. Then he saw Mrs. Morris looking at him. "Excuse me, friends. You have worked long enough now," she said. "You may come again this afternoon." "What shall I do with the vegetables I pulled up?" Henry asked. "Oh, I don't want them," said Mrs. Moore. "You can just leave them in a pile." "Do you mind if I take them?" asked Henry. "No, not indeed. Do you have chickens?" And then, without waiting for an answer, she went right on. "You have done good work. Here is $1." Henry said thank you and was glad because he did not have to answer about the chickens. When Mrs. Moore went into the house, he took some of the little carrots and turnips and onions. If he had looked up, he would have seen Mrs. Moore in the window watching him, but he did not look up. There's a picture of all the vegetables he thinned. He was too eager to get to the store and order some meat. When he arrived at the boxcar, Benny told him, "The building is done. I helped with it." The building was a fireplace made out of flat stones. "Benny did a lot of work today," said Jessie. "He carried stones and he found wood for the fire." The fireplace was a very good one. The children and Watch had made a hole at the foot of a big rock between two trees. Flat stones were laid on the floor of this hole and all the way around the sides. Then more big stones were put up to keep out the wind. Jessie had found a heavy wire in the dump and had put the big kettle on it and tied the ends of the wire to the two trees. Then she hung the kettle on top of the wire and hung it over the fireplace, and the fire was laid. Beside the fireplace was a big wood pile. "Fine, fine," cried Henry. "You have all done very well. Now, see what I have." The girls were delighted with the meat and the little vegetables. With Henry's knife, they cut the meat into little pieces, and then they filled the kettle with water from the fountain and put the meat into it with a tin plate for a cover. Henry started the fire, and it burned well right away. Jessie cut the tops off the vegetables and washed them in the brook. "I'll put them in after the meat is cooked a while," she said. Soon the water began to boil, and the stew began to smell really good. Watch sat down and looked at it. He sniffed hungrily at it and barked and barked. The children sat around the fireplace eating bread and milk. Now and then Jessie stirred the stew with a big spoon. "This is going to make a great meal," said Henry. "Keep it boiling and do not leave it. When I come home tonight, I'll bring you some salt. And whatever you do, don't get on fire." Violet pointed to the pitcher and the teapot that she had filled with water. "That's to put on Benny or watch if we ever were to catch on fire," she said. Henry laughed and went happily on his way. He wished he could stay and smell the stew boiling, but he thought he ought to work, so he went back to Dr. Moore's house. He was very happy when Dr. Moore said, "Do you want to clean up my garage today?" The garage was not in very good order. Dr. Moore laughed when he saw Henry looking around for a broom. "I must go out now," said Dr. Moore. "Please just clean this place up. It's a mess." Henry began to clean up at once. First he opened all the boxes. On the biggest box he painted the word tools with a long-handled brush and a can of paint he had found. On another box he painted nails, and then he picked over the things and put the tools in the toolbox and the nails in the nail box. This was fun for Henry because he liked to get things done in order. I think he likes to sort too. Henry found a lot of nails that were bent and covered with rust, so he put those in his pocket. "I'll ask the doctor if I could keep these bent nails," he said to himself. "They're no good to him, but they are fine for me. I can use every old nail I can get." Then he washed the floor and he washed his paintbrush. When Dr. Moore came home, he found Henry putting brushes, paint cans, and other things on the shelf. My, he cried. He looked at the garage and he laughed and he laughed. He laughed until his mother came out to see what he was laughing at. "Look, Mother," he said. "Look at those tools. Look at that shelf. Look at my hammers. 1, 2, 3, 4 hammers. Your hammer, my hammer, and 2 other hammers. They are all lost. Can you use a hammer, Henry?" They were all lost. Henry found all of his hammers. "Well, yes, indeed I can," cried Henry. "Take one," said Dr. Moore. "You found them all." I guess the garage was such a mess that the doctor thought he lost all of his tools. But Henry found them all. "Oh, thank you," said Henry. He showed the doctor the bent nails and was told that he could have those too. He could hardly wait now to start home because he was so eager to show Benny and his sisters his new hammer and nails. "Tomorrow will be Sunday," said Dr. Moore. "Will you come again the next day?" "Oh, yes," replied Benny, who had lost all track of the days. "The cherries must be picked," said the doctor. He looked at Henry in a queer way. "We could use any number of cherry pickers if they were all as careful as you." "Could you?" asked Henry eagerly. "Well, I'll come." So the 3 said goodbye, and Henry started for home. He had another $1, a pocket full of old nails, a hammer, and the pile of vegetables that he had left at noontime. On the way home, he stopped to buy some salt. When he arrived at the boxcar, he began to smell something delicious. "Onions!" he shouted, running up to the kettle. "I do like the smell of onions." "I like the turnips best," said Violet. Jessie took off the cover carefully and stirred in the salt, and Henry sniffed the brown stew. It was boiling and boiling. "A ladle, of all things!" cried Henry. "Where did you get it?" "I found a tin cup in the dump," said Jessie. "We used a long stick for a handle, and I tied it to the cup with a piece of wire. It makes a fine ladle for scooping up the stew." She took the ladle and ladled out the stew onto plates and bowls and put a spoon in each one. Oh, said Benny, I am so hungry. I must eat my supper. The meat was well cooked, and the vegetables were delicious. Violet passed her plate for some more turnips. I'd like some more onions, please, said Henry. All the children ate and ate until they could not eat any more. That was the best meal I have ever had, said Jessie. Me too, said Violet. I have time tonight to make Benny's cart, remarked Henry. We'll want a cart. Will you make it with my wheels? Asked Benny. Yes, with your wheels, answered Henry. But you must cart stones in it when I get it done. Yes, said Benny, I will cart stones or rocks or anything. Tomorrow will be Sunday, and I can stay at home. Henry went on. Do you think it's all right, Jessie, to build the dam for a swimming pool on Sunday? Why, yes, I do, said Jessie. We are making the swimming pool so that we can keep clean. Henry began happily to hammer out bent nails with his new hammer, and soon he had some very good straight nails. You and I will go and find some boards, Benny, he said. Come on. Soon the boys came back with some boards from the dump. Henry sat down and began to make the cart. He could not see very well because it was getting dark, and there was no moon. But at last the cart was done, and he gave it to Benny. Thank you, said Benny politely. After his sisters had admired the cart, Benny pulled it around just for fun, and then Henry put it in the boxcar for the night. Henry said to Jessie, I hope we do not hear that queer noise again tonight. I hope not too, said Jessie, and then she laughed. Look at Benny, she said. Benny had gone to sleep with his hand on his new cart. Henry laughed too, but he laughed at himself because he was going to sleep with his new hammer under his pillow. All right, folks, we are caught up and ready for Chapter 8. Coming up.